we're back to talk about substantive tests in the production cycle. So now we're trying to test those numbers, right? We understand the risk of material misstatement, right? So I'm trying to keep my audit risk very, very low. I want to get my audit right. I understand the risk of material misstatement now because I've done my control tests, so I know what that it is. And so now I'm doing my substantive procedures, right? And I'm trying to keep my detective risk appropriate to my risk of material misstatement. So I'm doing some substantive tests. All right. One type of substantive test I can do are what's called analytical procedures. So we've talked about these before. They can't possibly test controls because you don't look at any controls. All you do is look at numbers, right? An analytical test is where you estimate a number you think the client should have, and you see if that's what the number is, right? So for cost of goods sold, you could say, typically cost of goods sold is this certain percentage of sales, right? Or the profit margin is this percentage of sales, right? And you can compare that. You can say, okay, well, based on what the industry does, their gross margin, it's a grocery store, their gross margin should be 3%. Is it, right? You can look at that. It's a jewelry manufacturer. Their gross margin should be 200%. It's like very different from a grocery store. But anyway, compared to prior year, compared to competitors, right? So you can compare their cost of goods sold and their gross margin and see if it looks about right? Same thing with ending inventory. There are some ratios you can use. Day sales, inventory turnover. Hey, if they have very slow inventory turnover, or they've got a lot of day of sales in inventory, then inventory might be obsolete, or it might be not selling for some reason. It might be their price is too high, so they need to lower what they are carrying it on the book, something like that. So you can verify. There's a lot of analytic procedures. But typically comparing it to other organizations or prior years, and looking at their inventory turnover can tell you about the valuation. Substantive procedures. The main substantive procedure for inventory is the physical inventory. So we'll talk about that in its whole own video in the next one. But a substantive procedure is one that's going to tell you if those numbers on the books are right or not. So you're trying to make sure that none of that inventory is consignment. You're doing some analytical procedures. You're trying to find out if it's on consignment. You're trying to find out if it's collateral, because that needs to be disclosed. So you can check loan agreements. You're tracing for completeness. You're observing the physical inventory. You're performing lower cost or market. You're reviewing their calculations. You're tracing. You're inquiring. You're just doing a number of procedures that are going to help you understand, are those numbers the right numbers? Now, where can you get evidence? Well, sales forecasts tell you how many they were supposed to sell, which can tell you how many they should have made, right? Which can help you understand, well, if you said you were going to sell this much, you should have made this much. Did you? Right? Inventory reports. There's going to be a lot of reports. Theoretically, your client has a lot of controls to make sure they have control over the inventory. They don't want it walking out the door. So you should be able to tell what's there. There should be plans, reports, and of course the main test for you as an auditor is going to be observing the physical inventory, right? The audit standards require, if inventory is material, no, not every place is inventory is material, but if inventory is material, you have to observe at least some of the physical inventory. All right, so that's a requirement. So that's why we're going to spend time in our next video talking about it, because that's the main substantive test for inventory. Is it really there? Right? And you don't personally count it. I mean, you certainly as an auditor can't count all the inventory at Walmart, but they do hire people to do that. They do take inventory, and you can observe how that's done, right? All right, so next video talking about inventory.